So I've got the serrated edge here, guys, that I'm using. I like to use this sometimes, it comes out of the van sometimes, great for hardwall. It just highlights your misses, which I'll talk about in the video a bit later. It highlights your misses a lot better than your standard straight edge, feather edge, because it's got those teeth in there. So it's a lot, makes things just a lot easier. Grabs the plaster nice as well when you're rolling, and it doesn't slide off the tool the same way it does sometimes when using your feather edge. So I've got the top half on there, and I've give it a quick roll over with the put spat, and I'm just getting the bottom half in there. So I've got my first pass of hardwall on here, guys. We call this coat a roughing coat. Hasn't got to be 100% perfect. It's a case of getting it on at a good thickness. And what we do, we run our puts serrated edge spatula along it. I think it's about 1.2, this one, something like that. These are brilliant because they highlight your misses much better than standard feather edge, which is just obviously normal smooth edge. There's no teeth. So what this does, a bit like a tile notching trowel, it will leave lines in your scratch coat. It will highlight clearly where your misses are. So fantastic tool if the lighting's not great, or if you're learning. Pick up one of these, put serrated edge. It'll make your wet plastering and floating a lot easier for you. You can see here there's a miss. There's a miss there. We've got one there. I just showed you a few little bits and pieces. I'm not fussed on these misses because they're only shallow, and say there's another pass that goes over here, over the top, which I'm going to knock up now. Hardwall is designed for high suction surfaces, or medium to high. So we've got real old Victorian brick. I've put a weak mix of PVA over there first, and this has gone on at around 5mm roughly, something like that, maybe between 4 and 6mm roughly. I've checked it with my straight edge. I'm happy with it. It's pretty decent. The wall's not bad, to be honest. There's not a lot of building out. So your overall thickness, once you've got both coats on, wants to be somewhere around sort of 1/2 inch. Something like that is what we aim for. But obviously you're governed by the job and the wall and what you're doing. So for example here, I'm going to be running off this door liner and plastering flush with this, and the architrave will sit over the top. So this is about 8mm, something like that, maybe 7 or 8mm. So I can't go thicker than this, because then I'll be breaching the door liner. So at the top it runs up even tighter. There's probably around maybe 5 or 6mm at the top, and it sort of fluctuates as we run down the wall, so it's gone a bit deeper there. So it's a case of just using your initiative and adjusting the thickness to suit the job that you want. I've also got to get over these straps, which are poking out a little bit there. So yeah, it's not a case of doing exact thickness every single time. Be easier to do that if you on new block work, if depending on what the bricklayer was like, of course. But renovating old houses, you'll be governed by, let's say, things like your door liners, stuff like that. So I'll be running this Hardwall coat a little bit thinner than I have on this wall, and again just use your initiative and adjust the thickness to suit the job that you want. In some situations, like this wall here, I showed you where the door liner was, you might be able to get your Hardwall coat on it in one pass, and if you can do that, happy days. There's no reason why you can't do that. It's a lot easier on bigger walls to do Hardwall in 2 passes, but if you're going on a little bit thinner, you can do it in 1 pass. Obviously, depending on suction, if it's hot, really high suction, best off getting a roughing coat on, scratch that up, and then put your float coat straight over it, and that'll give you a bit more suction control. You know when your scratch coat's ready, because it'll firm up, and you'll just be able to get a thumb impression. If you can see that, I'll try and zoom in for you. Just be able to sink your thumb into the surface by a few mil, and then we're ready to go then. It's quite a slow setter, but you're usually going onto high suction background, so it'll go quite quick, providing you haven't completely killed suction on the wall. So you just repeat the process again with the top coat. Get a little band across the top. Unlike when you're skimming, you do shorter sweeps, so you get a decent thickness. Otherwise you'll end up spreading it on too thin. You only want to go, you know, about a foot. Sometimes you go back over it as well, sideways, and just you get a feel behind the trowel, and you'll get a feel for your thickness. Obviously you can see it as well. You're building that thickness up. Straight edge on the top half. Again, you'll see where your misses are. Backfill then. Run the straight edge over again. Another brilliant tool for Hardwall is the 1200 speed skim. This comes in once you've ruled off with your straight edge and it's starting to firm up a bit. Use your speed skim just to close in the surface. They're not really any good for ruling off, but they're great for closing in the Hardwall just before you devil float. Alright guys, we're at the final stages of this Hardwall job. Once you're happy that you've straightened up your walls, you're happy enough, you've got a decent tolerance. I normally say, 1 or 2 mil for your skim coat. 3 mil at a push. You want to try and get it as flat as you can. So just spend the time with your straight edge and run it over a few times and make sure you're happy with your tolerances. And then what we do is we take our plastic float, wet it up. We're going to wet the ceiling lines down a little bit and the edges of the walls. And we're going to take our plastic float and we're going to compress them edges in and rub them edges back. What that does, it gives you a real nice clean edge to work to. Gets rid of all your snots and it just compresses the Hardwall so it's 100% flat. We'll do the same on the internals. Just wet your internal up. Take your float, just run it down your internals. Make sure it's not too wet when you do this. It's got to be just at the stage where it's picking up and firming up. You can use your float and rub the whole wall up, but it's not necessary, to be honest. I tend to just rub out my ceiling lines, my internals, just to make sure that we're nice and square for when that skim coat goes on and there's no snots. You can use your trowel. I've always found it easier to rub up. I know a lot of spreads don't bother rubbing up Hardwall. They'll straighten off and then finish with the trowel, which is fine. Again, everyone works differently. I find this is best way for me, and I'd advise giving it a go and see how you feel. But yeah, we're going to just put a pretty pattern in this now, and if I can find where my scratcher is somewhere on the van, my devil float, give it a figure of 8